Today on Biblical Higher Ed Talk, I sit down with Steve Nichols, president of Reformation Bible College, to discuss how they are expanding their educational offerings in places you may not expect. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Philip Dearborn, president of ABHE, and this is an episode that I think will be one of my favorites for this year. I've invited a good friend of mine, Steve Nichols, to join me for a conversation today. Steve and I go way back. In fact, I won't even disclose where and how to save the stories from those times together. But we were blessed to be able to serve together at an institution for a number of years and truly is a dear friend and somebody that I highly respect. Steve is the president of Reformation Bible College, and RBC is an applicant institution for accreditation with ABHE, and they are located in Sanford, Florida. And Steve, I've often gotten in trouble for doing these kinds of things, but to the audience out there, if ever you're in Sanford, Florida, or the Orlando area, I highly suggest you drive up and take a look at Reformation Bible College. Just an absolutely beautiful campus in a beautiful part of Florida. You'll hear about it kind of in this episode, some of the work that Steve has been doing over these years of just building out a beautiful facility, very intentional, very student focused. And that's what we're going to talk about. So Steve, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Philip. So looking forward to this time with you. And we probably have a whole nother episode where we recount our past adventures. That would be fun.
Exactly. That may actually have to be a 2 or 3 parter, but it has been a joy working with you, and God has clearly led in your life. And for me personally, while it was hard to see you leave the context that we were in before, just seeing you thrive as the president at RBC is something pretty cool and special to see. So we're going to get into a series of questions. Before we do that, just a shout out to Logos Bible Software. I really do appreciate them. They are longtime partners with ABHE, and they are the sponsors for this episode. If you know nothing about them, I highly suggest you go out, check them out. They have a fantastic product that really provides in-depth Bible study. All right, Steve. So our audience can get to know you a little bit. This is often the opening question for our podcast, and would love to hear from your life experience. Talk to us about one thing that God used in your life that has propelled you forward to kind of where you are now as president of Reformation Bible College.
Over half of my career in biblical higher education was in the classroom. I was a professor, and I went to a Bible college. And in my freshman year, I signed up for Greek. And I think because it was a Monday night class and Monday was like registration day or something, I think it was my very first college class I ever had. And the professor walks into the class, Philip. He's got his Machen grammar, Greek grammar, stands at the podium, lifts it up, kisses it, puts it down on the podium, and proceeds with this just captivating lecture on how much work it's going to be, Greek, but why this is going to be so rewarding for your personal growth, study of the Bible, future ministry. And I'm sitting there, Philip, and my light bulbs are going off. And I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest. I never want to leave a college classroom for the rest of my life. So when I finish on this side of the podium, I would love it if I could be on the other side. I think like that week, I went to all my faculty, I went to the dean, and I said, what do you look for when you hire faculty? And sort of set a course.
And this was as a freshman in the school?
As a fresh. I mean, it literally was that clear of this is what I want to do with my life, and God is blessed. I think then the other piece has been down here at RBC after my 17 years up at Lancaster Bible College, working under your leadership up there, and just so grateful for those years and the ministry I had there. I loved the students up there. I really did. It was a hard decision. But again, it was one of those sort of moments where things just become clear. And what I saw here was it had just been founded in 2011. And we were founded by R.C. Sproul. He had a very clear vision for the college. And I really saw it as wet cement. And this is a place where I could roll up my sleeves and really get behind this and see what can be done here in Sanford. So I came down here in 2014. I crossed that Rubicon from the classroom to administration. And honestly, I had so much fun as a professor, but really challenges, obviously, in this role, but just have so much been blessed by God and for our whole family. It's just been wonderful for us.
And typically you don't see that there are various paths to the presidency. And one that I would say historically has been from faculty to president. But I'd say you probably see that actually less today than what you did before. And I think it's because of the added business functions of running an organization and institution. There's so many stakeholders that are involved in higher education, biblical higher education, that you're constantly navigating and the fundraising and those kinds of things. For you, how hard of a transition was that? Because I know you're passionate about the classroom and you do a fantastic job in that context. For those who may be listening who are faculty members who perhaps think that they want to cross that divide, how did you navigate it?
Yeah, I do miss I teach course this semester, actually last 3 semesters, I've been teaching 2 classes, but I just can't do it because of travel. Yeah. And I hate missing classes for these poor students, but I'm committed to teaching a class every semester. I wish I could teach more. That's the piece I miss. I just love being in the classroom and being there with students. But I'll say for me, I really enjoy these other pieces to it. I just came off of 3 donor trips in a row. I enjoy these times. These folks are aligned with us. They believe in our mission and they really are encouraging. So I come away from those with wind in the sails to keep at it here and to move forward here. I finally realized, Philip, it took me 10 years, but I finally realized I could try to maybe control my schedule a little more than let it control me. So I'm very productive in the morning. So I try to keep my mornings, but afternoons are meetings. And I have to admit that every day I look at my calendar and I see one meeting after another from 11 to 5. I think maybe I should have stayed in the classroom.
Yeah, there's a great leadership piece to this. Tyranny of the urgent is a real thing. And if you don't get ahead of that and put parameters in place, your schedule will chase you. And I even like how you block your time so that life-giving exercises, you make sure that that's built into your schedule before meetings suck the lifeblood out of you.
Yeah, I read this book back in, I guess it was back in summer, maybe spring. Uptime. She's the time czar at Google. And it's just a very simple thing. You know, where are you most productive? Save that time for yourself. And where you're least, productive, schedule the meetings because now you have something in front of you to keep you moving. The other thing I think too, Philip, is I was telling my assistant this for our motto for this next year. And she was kind of teasing me that it's not really a motto. We're going to keep priorities, and we're not going to let non-priorities become priorities. And she's right. It's not a motto.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would fit on a t-shirt, but
it's maybe too many words.
Yeah.
But it is true. Yeah. We whatever it is, we can let things that really aren't a priority take our energy and time.
Yeah.
Those are things we learn. And the reality is meetings, if they're done well and viewed with, some effectiveness, that's how you accomplish moving the ball down the field. It's sort of like, you travel so you could go be with people. Nobody really enjoys travel for the sake of travel these days, but you have to do that to be with people. And meetings are that way that we get things done and move things forward. So,
Well, there's some bonus advice for our listeners on some leadership. So, beautiful campus. Like I said, if people are around, check by your security people before going on campus. Maybe let Steve know ahead of time. But thriving enrollment. Talk to us about your curricular and student experience approach, because I know it's unique.
Yeah, we started with one building. So really the focus at the beginning, and it's at the core of our identity, is the curriculum. And there's a simplicity to it. We have one degree. It's a Bachelor of Arts in Theology, and we have 2 majors. And essentially one major is the languages that prepares students for seminary and pastoral ministry. And then the other major is for everyone else, whether that's ministry of another variety or missions or vocations, whatever God calls them to. So that focus was right there at the beginning. And I want to say almost out of necessity because of starting, but I've found it to be really a genius for us and help us to just stay focused and stay aligned. But our curriculum, we have 3 veins. We have survey of theology that runs for 7 semesters. We do hermeneutics in the fall and then 7 semesters of Bible survey. And then we have a communications class in the freshman fall and then follow that up with 7 semesters of great works to get at the humanities and a true liberal arts education. And it's great works of literature mostly, but also art and music as we move from the ancient Greeks to contemporary 20th century.
Yeah, which I pause right there because there's so much in that. I love, and obviously I know how your curriculum is designed, which is why I'm asking this question, because I think it's such a unique approach where oftentimes we think of biblical theological education as one end of a spectrum and the liberal arts great books approach as the other end, as if they're in tension with each other. There are probably some elements that they exist in tension, but the solution has been either or versus kind of a both. And while we have liberal art education today, perhaps it's not what it once was, because liberal art education was originally based on kind of a great books approach. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah, it's sort of a, classical education model is that model alongside of all of that Bible. And it's Bible survey, 3 OT, 4 NT, because when we get to Romans, we stop and give Romans its whole class. And then same for theology. I went to seminary. You don't have 4 years of seminary. You have 2 or 3. So 7 theology courses is a lot. It allows you to sort of take your time and go through these doctrines. So really having that true foundation of knowing God's word and then building on that with rounding out theology and then layering in a liberal arts education, it really is a wonderful curriculum.
Yeah.
So how does that, we have other classes around it too.
Yeah. How does that then change your, or not change, how does it feed into your ethos on campus then?
Yeah, so it helps define us. Here's what I think is interesting with us. We sort of started with a curriculum, and that was really at the center of what we did. We didn't do a whole lot with student life and student experience. We didn't really have a campus. We had one building. It was a beautiful building. But when we realized we needed to build a new building, we not only got a new building, but we got a campus. And when we got that campus, it really changed things. And now all of a sudden there's places for students to be. And what we did was we developed a house system, which is also keeping in with that sort of classical tradition. And of course, we bring in all of our favorite theologians. So we've got a Luther house, a Calvin house, an Edwards house. And we're not just, we have Baptists here. So we have a Spurgeon house for our Baptist friends. I think introducing that house system more than anything revolutionized student life. It's easy for especially people who love theology to sort of become eggheads. And I might even say become a little imbalanced. And it's really in those out of the classroom moments where a culture begins to take shape, an institutional culture and a community. I would even say this is where we live out our theology. Like we can affirm it and study it all day long in the classroom and know it inside and out. But we want our students to live out their theology. And I think as we developed that community, and we're blessed here with this beautiful campus and this beautiful context for it, we have then that curriculum for that academic experience, but really rounding out that 360 student experience with the house system. It's been wonderful. And that came online fall of 2020, the house system.
Yeah.
So it's just been great to have that as part of the RBC ethos.
It's a great example of how the curriculum intentionally drives your culture and is absorbed in the entire organization. And higher education is unfortunately known for the silos that appear on campus, and the student experience rarely is connected through all of those various silos. So we have academics over here, we have student development over here, we have athletics over here, we have spiritual formation over here, all with good hearts and good intentions, but rarely is there cross-pollination. And one thing I've learned is that students don't connect dots on their own. Right. And by you starting very simplistically, our curriculum is the core, and that's going to inform every aspect of our campus and create our campus culture that starts to address those silos.
Yeah, absolutely. And, another thing, and I think this is because I came out of faculty and go back to our founder, RC, he really cared about content at the center. The faculty really drive a lot of the culture and the ethos here too. And so I think that's helpful, especially for Bible colleges and Christian colleges. We want to be thinking about how we put faithful people in front of these students to model for them what faithful discipleship looks like. And if we just have the faculty doing their thing here, but student care is taking place over here, or the discipleship groups are taking place over here, and never the twain shall meet. And even sadly, I think sometimes there's competition or misunderstandings maybe between each other. We really see the faculty as a moving force here. Yeah. And honestly, some of it, Philip, also has to do, I think, with our size as an institution.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about size, because being in higher education for the 3 decades that I have, and you probably the same amount, maybe 4 decades, you're quite a bit older than I am, is this notion that success is growth, right? We're all about growth. And, it's like the single metric that if you have more students than you had last year, then you're a healthy institution and you're on mission, which it could contribute to some of those realities, but doesn't necessarily paint the whole story. You all cap enrollment. So talk to us about why you're capping enrollment and how does that change your approach?
Yeah, so we are very intentional about being an institution of about 200. And this year we've reached that. We're 209 FTE and 250 is our head count. We actually designed the campus. So our building that we built with faculty offices, classrooms, and just the space, we came to the architects and we said, we desire to be 200 FTE, 250-ish head count. That's the space we have. And they said they had the reaction too. They never worked with a college that said that. Everyone was going to be the biggest ever. Part of it goes back to our vision. And our vision actually is kind of boring because it is simply to be faithful in educating students in the historic Christian faith. That's our vision. We seek to be faithful. And so that smaller number, you can set a really high bar for everyone you hire, and not just faculty, because our staff spend as much time with students. So we can really plumb deep for alignment, and not just the competency and a sort of theological alignment, but a vision alignment to appreciate what we're trying to do here and say, I want to be a part of that. So it helps us on the hiring end. I think for students, there are sort of scales that you reach. And I think for incoming students, our incoming class is 70, 80 students. It's big, but they can get to know each other. And so there is genuine community on campus that pretty much every student knows each other, and every student is known by the faculty and staff. And so there's just a lot of accountability built into that smaller community that I think contributes to our identity and our alignment. And then the other thing is, we don't need to be proliferating majors to continue that growth. We can stay focused on our 2 majors and just continually to enhance. I've told the faculty and staff here, achieving our goal is nothing. We have to maintain it, and not just maintain it, but really establish it. So we have to constantly be making those little improvements, those little enhancements to the student experience so that we do give them a premium education and a premium experience.
Are you operating off of a waiting list at this point, or?
No, we've just achieved it now. And we've had fairly generous deadlines in the past. And that always creates challenges, right? For us, whether it's budgeting or just planning. I think once we reach it, it'll actually help us and help especially some of the staff in the admissions and in the registrar's office if we enforce those deadlines, then it's just a question of the deadlines that are helping it. That may get us a couple years, but eventually 5-6 years, we're going to have challenges here that we're going to need to sort through once we get there, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. But it's the intentionality and the lesson learned, the leadership lesson learned here is like you have a very specific vision, a very specific mission, and everything follows suit in your programming, how you approach things. You're exactly right. When you buy into, we just have to grow from what we were last year. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, let's add this program. Well, let's add this program. Well, let's add this program. And in the process, you're not taking anything away. And there are legitimate higher education situations where an institution will have 50, 60 majors with 400 students. And it's just simply not sustainable.
So that, that's the other piece for us and what we want to do. That 200 is helpful for the faithful piece, but it's also a fiscal stewardship because again, you hit scale, then you need to add. And we also want to keep tuition very affordable. And it's a strange math I've learned as an administrator that revenues are like addition, but expenses are like multiplication. So,
How does that work?
It really works out that way
Yeah.
because you figure, okay, every faculty member you got to hire, how many students do you have to pay for that salary? We've run the numbers on this is a sweet spot for us. We need to go out and raise about $2 to $3 million every year, which is a manageable sum to raise. This year we're going to probably just be north of $3 million in our donation revenues, which will help us think about some new initiatives and campus enhancements. But it also, the numbers also making fiscal stewardship. And, this is true for us. Higher education, there's a lot of colleges out there for people. And this is what helps us. We don't have to try to chase after students. Some inspiration for this was in a little interview in the Wall Street Journal with the newly appointed CEO of J.C. Penney, which is not a position I'd wish upon anyone. That's a challenge. In the interview, he said, we've gotten ourselves into trouble because we're trying to convince all of these people to love us. We're trying to chase after these customers, Macy's customers or Target's customers. And we're trying to become all these things. He said, we've got a new philosophy. We're going to give people who love us more reasons to love us, which is to say, we know who our target is. We're just going to focus on them and not chase after some of these others. And that sort of helps us too.
It builds your value proposition.
I think it does. And I think it gives us, again, that identity that then leads into that culture, and alignment really is key for all that.
You and I had dinner together several weeks ago, and you were telling me about an initiative. So while you are capping enrollment for face-to-face on instruction, you also have other initiatives. The one I want you to talk about here, and as we start to wrap up, you have an amazing opportunity of providing theological education for inmates. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So we have a prison ministry here at Ligonier Ministries, which we are business terms as subsidy of. This prison ministry has been in a prison in Alabama, Bibb County Prison. They've gone through a series. We do a lot of teaching series. They've gone through a concentrated focus of these teaching series. And this first cohort graduated. I had the opportunity to go down and be there for their commencement. And I spent 8 hours in Bibb County Prison with these men. And Philip, first of all, I felt like a spiritual pygmy coming out of there. One of these guys is in for murder, 2 counts of murder, double life sentences. He's tacked on charges before he got converted in prison. And he'll tell you, Philip, I probably won't get out of prison and I probably don't deserve to, but I have Christ and I have everything I need. And I just want to come and help these guys. Like they see their fellow inmates as the mission field. They see their fellow Christian inmates as discipleship opportunities. And these 2 guys in particular that we met that co-facilitated our study, they're both lifers, but they're helping guys who are going to get released be better dads, better fathers, better citizens, better Christians. So we have opportunities to pilot with them to bring our foundation year, our certificate program to this prison. And Lord willing, in the next year or so, we'll be starting that up and then try to take that other places. God is at work inside the prison system. It is a very fascinating thing. And I think a lot of Christians aren't aware of what's going on inside the walls. And in fact, that's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it RBC Inside. We're very excited and humbled by that opportunity.
Yeah. When you look at your business model of a capped enrollment for on-campus, that doesn't mean that you think outside of the box of, you do diversify. So you're doing education and there are efficiencies. This is like, what are other ways that what we do, keeping the main thing, what are other ways that we can reach different populations with our education? What a beautiful story. And you shared some of those stories of just these men who have experienced Christ at their lowest points and are just hungry. They see the responsibility that they have. And I love that imagery of the one who's in there for life, but bad choices and he deserves to be there. But he has an opportunity to speak into the lives of those who aren't there for life.
Yeah.
And true reform can happen. And we know that true reform doesn't happen outside of Christ.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Back to your point, for us, we do believe we have something here that's valuable. And we want to be thinking about how we can expand our footprint. I think the more we're able to go into this, maybe even a high school curriculum or overseas curricula, all that's going to do is strengthen Sanford. Like, our students will be very much a part of this. And they're RBC students right along Bibb County Prison RBC students. I think those things are just going to enhance and strengthen what we do here, and then give us even more leverage, to reach out. So that's sort of what we're thinking for what's next for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, we've come to the end of the show, which is so hard to believe. This has been a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate you, Steve, and all
pleasure.
of the work that you do. We've got 1 minute left. So in that last minute, I can call you now a seasoned leader. You are in the prime of your leadership experiences. With our listeners, 20s, 30s-year-olds, those who are emerging leaders at our institutions, what's a word of advice you'd like to leave with them?
I would say be confident in your theology. We are living in such an intense moment right now. And I think there are so many on the left and the right that are just making everything so ideological. I think the temptation is there for us as Christians and conservatives to just make everything ideological and just be culture warriors all the time. Just be confident in your theology. That to me is honestly the best. We know all these issues that are out there are at core theological. And so that means the solutions are at the core theological. As we know who we are and our confidence and our identity in Christ, that just can be so helpful for us to navigate these moments. And they're probably not going away for this next generation of leadership.
Yeah. A great word of advice. And again, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Always enjoy time with you, Philip.
Absolutely. So if you'd like more information about what Steve is doing at Reformation Bible College, we put a link to their website in the show description. And again, a special thank you to Logos Bible Software and their continued partnership and support with ABHE. So until next time, stay kingdom focused.